Adaeze was in her father's study. She had gone back to the birth certificate. She was sitting at the heavy mahogany desk, the same desk where the envelope had been found. Then her phone rang. She looked at the screen. St. Augustine's Hospital. She frowned. She answered. A quiet voice on the other end. Dr. Okafor. He said, Miss Obiora, I need you to come to the hospital. There is something you need to see, something that cannot be explained over the phone. She asked, Is it about my DNA sample? Dr. Okafor paused. He said, Please come as soon as you can. Adaeze stood up. She put the birth certificate back in the envelope. She picked up her keys. She walked out of the study. She did not call Chief Emeka. She did not call Auntie Pat. She got in the Maybach. She told the driver, St. Augustine's Hospital, now. But to understand what was waiting for her at that hospital, we need to go back. To that same morning, to a road on the other side of the city, and to a woman who had been walking since before sunrise. If you have been following this story, you already know the pain. The market, the charity hall, the traffic junction. 3 times. 3 times they came within reach of each other. And 3 times something stood in the way. Her pride, a phone call, a moving car. But in part 3, the story stops being about near misses. In part 3, God moves. And what happens next? Nobody planned. Mr. Dyke called on a Tuesday morning. Adaeze was still in bed when the call came. She sat up immediately. He said he had a possible sighting. A woman matching Ngozi's description had been seen regularly in the Iwani area of Enugu. A provisions trader, known in the area, the neighbors called her the woman who waits. Adaeze's hand tightened on the phone. She said, Go there today, right now. He said he was already on his way. She ended the call. She sat on the edge of her bed for a long moment. Her 3 gold rings caught the morning light. She whispered, this time. But Ngozi was not in Uwani that morning. She had left before sunrise, the way she always left when her small provisions stock needed replenishing from the wholesale market on the other side of the city. She carried her cloth bag. She wore her faded yellow and brown kaba, her worn headwrap, her cracked sandals. She walked because okada money was okada money, and every naira had a destination. She had been walking for 40 minutes when she felt it. Not pain exactly, something heavier than pain, a pulling down, like the ground was asking her to come closer. She stopped. She pressed one hand against the low wall of a closed roadside shop. She stood very still. The morning sun was already strong, burning down on the dusty road with the particular cruelty of an Enugu morning that has decided it is done being gentle. She told herself, just rest a moment, just breathe. She was still standing at the wall when the world tilted, not dramatically, not like the movies, just quietly, the way a candle goes out when the wax is finally finished. Her knees went first, then her shoulder found the wall, then the wall was not enough. And she was on the ground, her cloth bag spilled beside her. Her provisions list, a small folded piece of paper with items written in careful handwriting, floated to the dusty ground. And the photograph, the worn, creased black and white photograph of a baby girl, fell from the open bag and landed face up in the dust beside her outstretched hand. The baby's face looking up at the morning sky. The road was not empty, but it was not busy either. 2 okadas passed. A danfo bus, packed and running late, barely slowed. A woman carrying a tray of bread on her head saw her and kept walking. This is the thing about cities. They are full of people and completely empty of time. Nobody stopped. And then, a black Maybach turned onto the road. Inside the car, Adaeze was on her way to Uwani. Mr. Dyke had sent her the address. She had not been able to wait. She had told herself she was just driving past, just to see the area, not to interfere with Mr. Dyke's work. But the truth was simpler than that. She could not sit in that mansion for 1 more hour. She was in the back seat, her ivory linen jumpsuit, her dark sunglasses, her gold rings. Her phone in her hand, Mr. Dyke's address open on the screen. The driver turned onto the road. She was looking at the address. She was not looking out the window. And then the driver's voice, quiet, uncertain. He said, Madame, there is a woman on the ground. Adaeze looked up. Through the windshield, 30 meters ahead, a figure, on the ground, At the roadside, an old cloth bag spilled beside her, a small piece of paper in the dust, and something else, a small photograph, face up, catching the morning sun. The driver slowed slightly, waiting.
Adaeze looked at the figure on the ground, the headwrap, the yellow and brown fabric. Something moved in her chest, the same thing that moved at the market, at the charity hall, at the traffic junction. That nameless pull, that door she kept passing. She looked at her phone. The address in Uwani was 2 streets away. Mr. Daiki was already there. She looked back at the figure on the ground. Something in her said, "Stop." And the old Adaeze, the Adaeze who had been built by years of never stopping, never bending, never crossing the distance, said, "Mr. Daiki is already there. You are almost at the address. This woman is probably drunk, probably ill. Someone will stop. Someone always stops." She said to the driver, "Keep going." The driver hesitated for 1 second, like he was waiting for her to be someone else, just one. Then he pulled forward. Adaeze did not look back. She looked at the address on her phone. She told herself, she is fine. Someone will stop. But nobody stopped. Not for the first 5 minutes, not for the next 5. Ngozi lay in the dust. The morning sun burned down. The photograph lay beside her hand, the baby's face in the dust, patient and still. And then a car. Not a Maybach, not a big car, a small, tired Corolla with one slightly dented bumper and a dashboard that rattled on bad roads. It stopped. Inside were 2 people, Chidi and Blessing, a young couple. Chidi was a teacher. Blessing sold fabric from a small shop near the market. They were not rich. They were not important. They were just people who saw a woman on the ground and could not drive past her. Chidi was out of the car before it had fully stopped. Blessing was already on the phone, calling for help, calling for anyone, calling for God. Chidi knelt beside Ngozi in the dust. He checked her breathing. He called her name, even though he didn't know her name. "Ma, Ma, can you hear me?" Ngozi's eyes opened, barely, just enough to see a face above her that she did not know. She tried to speak. Her mouth moved. Chidi leaned closer. She was not saying words. She was saying a name. Ada. Ada. Just that. Over and over, like even unconscious, even with the world going dark around her, the one thing her body refused to stop saying was her daughter's name. Chidi looked at Blessing. Blessing looked at the photograph in the dust. She picked it up carefully. A baby girl, black and white, old. Then she slipped it gently into Ngozi's cloth bag. Then she helped Chidi lift her. They did not know which hospital to take her to. Blessing said, "St. Augustine's. It is the closest. It is the best." Chidi said, "Then St. Augustine's." They did not know that St. Augustine's was where Ngozi had given birth 26 years ago. They did not know that St. Augustine's was where Adaeze had deposited her DNA sample. They did not know any of this. They just drove, because that is what people who still have their humanity intact do. They just drive.
Adaeze arrived at the Uwani address 4 minutes later. Mr. Dyke was standing outside a narrow compound with a peeling blue gate. He looked at her with the expression of a man about to deliver the worst kind of news. She got out of the car. He said, "She was here this morning, but she left before sunrise. The neighbors say she goes to the wholesale market on the other side of the city every few weeks." Adaeze stared at the peeling blue gate, the blue gate of a life she had not known existed. She asked, "Will she come back today?" Mr. Dyke said he didn't know. Adaeze stood at that gate for a long time. She thought about the woman on the road. She pushed the thought away. She said to Mr. Dyke, "Wait here. Call me the moment she returns." And she got back in the Maybach and she drove home. She did not sleep that night. She lay in the dark and stared at the ceiling fan and told herself, someone stopped. Someone always stops. At St. Augustine's Hospital, Ngozi was in the emergency ward. Dehydration, exhaustion, malnutrition. The doctor, Dr. Okafor, a quiet man who had worked at St. Augustine's for 19 years, looked at her admission form. No next of kin listed, no emergency contact, just a name, Ngozi Eze. He ordered full blood work, full panels, everything. In the corridor outside the emergency ward, Chief Emeka Obiora walked past. He was not there for Ngozi. He did not know Ngozi was there. He came to St. Augustine's every 3 months, routine cardiovascular check. Dr. Mensah's office was at the end of this corridor. He was already running late. He walked quickly, his white agbada moving around him, his driver 2 steps behind, and he did not look into the emergency ward as he passed. But Ngozi looked out. Through the blur of her exhaustion and the fluorescent light and the drip in her arm, she saw him. The white agbada, the broad shoulders, the heavy walk of a man who has always taken up space as though it belongs to him. And something in her body, older than memory, older than 26 years of searching, older than the river and the boat and the baby she had held against the current, went completely still. She knew that walk. She knew those shoulders. She had spent one terrible night in a room with those shoulders and woken up alone and been accused of something she had not done. She tried to sit up. The nurse pushed her gently back down. She tried to speak. Her voice came out as a whisper. She said, "That man." The nurse looked at the corridor. Chief Emeka was already at the end of the hall, already turning the corner, already gone. The nurse said, "Which man, ma? There is nobody there now."
Ngozi lay back. Her heart was beating so fast she could feel it in her temples. Her hands were shaking. She looked at the ceiling. She thought about the girl at the charity event, the one with the braids and the gold rings and the face that looked exactly like the face she saw in her mirror before the years came. And then she thought about the man in the corridor, and something began to move in the back of her mind, something she was not ready to look at directly. Not yet, not here, not alone in this hospital bed with a drip in her arm and her cloth bag on the chair beside her and her photograph inside it. She closed her eyes. In the morning, Dr. Okafor reviewed her results. Everything was as expected: exhaustion, dehydration, mild cardiac stress from years of insufficient nutrition, and then one result that was not expected: a flag in the system, a rare genetic marker, one that the hospital's database cross-referenced automatically against stored samples. Dr. Okafor stared at the screen. He looked at the match probability. He looked at the name attached to the stored sample. He looked at the admission form for the woman in bed 7. He sat back in his chair. He was a quiet man. He did not gasp. He did not make a sound. He just sat very still for a long moment, the way a man sits when the world has just rearranged itself and he needs a moment to find his footing in the new arrangement. Then he picked up his phone. He did not call Adaeze first. He called the lab. He said, "Run it again. I need to be certain." The lab ran it again. The result came back in 40 minutes. 99.97%. Dr. Okafor picked up his phone again. This time, he dialed. And now you know. Now you know what was in that study, what she was holding when the phone rang, what she was whispering into the quiet of that room when everything changed. Then her phone rang, and everything that had been moving toward this moment for 26 years arrived. She did not know that the woman she had driven past on the road was lying in bed 7 at St. Augustine's. She did not know that the DNA result waiting for her would answer everything she had been asking for the last several months. She did not know that the same hospital where she had deposited her hope in a small clear vial with a barcode label was the same hospital where her mother had screamed through the night 26 years ago and held a tiny girl and whispered a name. She did not know any of this. She just drove. And the moment she had been searching for, the moment she had hired investigators for, dropped DNA for, said names out loud in dark rooms for, pressed her hand against cold glass for, was waiting for her at the end of a hospital corridor, in a ward she had driven past without stopping, in a bed that held a woman she had left in the dust, the woman she chose not to see, in a moment that would not wait for her to be ready. Don't miss part 4, because what happens when Adaeze walks into that ward will change everything. End of part 3.